The headline that claimed that Prophet Elvis Mbonye would get grilled on his opposition to immunization. Well, today we have Evelyn Naikoba and Simon Ssenyonga from the Zoe Fellowship Ministries to explain to us what is going on at the Zoe Fellowship right there and clarify whether the Prophet is opposed to immunization or not. Apparently he's out of the country, but then we'll get to know in a little bit. So, Ssenyonga, thank you for coming. Naikoba, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So, first off, what is happening at Zoe Fellowship Ministries? Mr. Mbonye coming out to advise his flock not to take their children for immunization, saying that vaccines may cause autism. How true are these allegations?
The allegations are false. What's happening at Zoe, we are continuing to prosper, we are continuing to preach the gospel, we are continuing to prophesy. The prophet hasn't made any allegations to that extent. I think the only thing on record is his prophecy, which was given last year in 2018, which was clear about a health scandal that was coming up within the health sector. It was in regards to, again, the hepatitis B vaccination. But in regards to anything concerning the current measles rubella immunization, he hasn't made anything.
Naikoba.
Yes, please.
The prophet is out of the country. And some contend that the reason he left could be because he noticed that CID was about to summon him over his decampaigning immunization campaign right there. Is it true?
Well, before we can go into whether the prophet is out of the country or in the country, I think it's important that what has been put out there in the media is actually addressed by the authorities that are responsible for it. New Vision on Tuesday wrote a story that it's important that CID, for example, categorically come out and publicly issued whether they were not honored, whether there is any crime against the prophet. We cannot base our explanation on media reports that we can't substantiate. We would request that the respective authorities, being CID for example, because the article spoke about the CID spokesman making those remarks, to actually come out and address us publicly on this. Yes.
Ssenyonga, Mr. Mbonye has been accused of milking his followers dry and splurging all that money on his own private interests.
I think that is true. I think, again, it's a media stunt. You guys are in the business of trading on fake news, especially the New Vision, based on that article, and even your sister newspaper, the Daily Monitor, yesterday made a very rubbish
asking for more time to produce Mr. Mbonye
exactly.
at CID offices.
And exactly that's the point. That
so you haven't been summoned
or not. I think, again, as my colleague has said, the officials who are making any allegations, and to who have they summoned, who is the exact person, and what are the accusations, what's the crime, what's the offense. Nothing has been stated. What they're doing is, number one, cause a media blackout for the Zoe Ministries and the Prophet Elvis Mbonye, do cause a blackmail and a maligning campaign against the name and all those most of the incompetent government offices. Yes.
Naikoba, do you think this is a smear campaign?
What I think is that, one, before something like that, especially like Simon mentioned, that this is actually a leading newspaper, right? Before an article like that on the top cover story should come out, investigations ought to be made. The process of carrying out investigations, Article 123 affords the DPP power to direct police to carry out investigations. What ordinarily should guide those investigations is, one, that there was an offense committed within the meaning of the law, and two, that the person that is being accused is actually committed that crime. So before a newspaper can run a story like that, it is important that the investigations are actually carried out. So one wonders whether that has been done. But in the event that it has been done, like we say and we emphasize, we want them to come out publicly and state what crime Prophet Elvis Mbonye has committed and the proceedings that should follow.
Now, Mr.
that.
Ssenyonga, in light of the accusations levied against Mr. Mbonye and other pastors who were accused of milking their flock, government came up with an initiative to introduce regulation on these churches and the mosques, not only the churches only, even the mosques, to rein in on these unscrupulous pastors right there. Do you agree with government when they say that, okay, we are going to require all churches and clerics to go through some kind of theological training? Do you agree with that?
I think as a ministry I've expressed our views in the press statement that was released late last week. Number one, we say that we disagree with the whole process of the making of this policy, that it didn't follow the basic guidelines that were issued by the government in 2013 concerning the procedure of making any public policy. That there wasn't fair consultation. As you may be aware, that a meeting had to happen on Thursday last week where all the key stakeholders were invited. The Prophet was invited and he sent the representatives, and on arrival at the Hotel Africana we were informed that the meeting had been cancelled without any notification to the Prophet. Now that was a below the belt tactic, because you can't invite a person who you claim to be a high level stakeholder and then afterwards you cancel a meeting without. We say that even the basis of the policy is extremely misguided. The problem statement lists down 5 key issues. One of them is that the lack of the trained spiritual leaders or religious leaders has caused actually most of the key problems. Question is this: everybody in Luzira, upper prison or whatever, maximum prison, how many of them are educated? All right, look at the key people who are actually fronting this policy. The people who addressed the press conference on Friday last week, Reverend Father Simon Lokodo and Canon Aaron Mwesige, say that it's because of the lack of education that actually the spiritual leaders can't deliver. Reverend Father Simon Lokodo is an excommunicated priest. He has no moral capacity to actually legislate against the church. Reverend Canon Aaron Mwesige, an article that was published in the New Vision by Alfred Wesige in 2004, implicated him actually. There were allegations that actually he was sent away from All Saints Church for stealing money from an offertory from the All Saints Church. Now, question is this: Aaron Mwesige and Lokodo claim that they're educated, but they're at the forefront of saying that they were the forefront of allegations of stealing money, excommunication. You've heard of the allegations levied against Reverend Father Simon Lokodo, and he can come out to prove whether actually he hasn't been having issues with some of issues concerning his relationships, sexual relationships, and Aaron Mwesige for stealing money. So those two individuals who want to legislate against the church and whoever they are working for actually have no moral capacity, and that's why we are opposed. You can't be morally incompetent and then you want to legislate against the church. So beyond just the legalese that we can throw around, I think the key thing is that we take the battle where it belongs, and they have wanted to play politics, and we have come out against them and to take them on at that very front.
Okay, Ms. Naikoba, a similar law was passed in Kenya in 2015. A year later, a similar policy was passed in 2015, Kenya.
Yes.
2016 was passed into law, and it was withdrawn a little bit afterward that. It did not take off. Now, in Uganda here, do you think this law is a ploy by the state to indoctrinate religion?
Just to add to what Simon mentioned as I respond to that, the mandate of the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, one, their primary mandate is to actually enhance integrity, moral values through fighting corruption, right? Now, just last year, 2018, a report by Corruption Perspectives Index by Transparency International ranked Uganda the 149 out of 175, meaning that we're the 26th most corrupt country. That therefore means that Uganda's problems are truly bigger than the church. They're truly bigger. We should be focusing on actually dealing with corruption, for which Honorable Simon Lokodo.
So do you think it's a ploy Uganda?
Obviously, I would say this because, one, the Constitution expressly provides that there should be no state religion. Okay, but if we look at some of one, the problem statement, two, the rationale and what has been proposed in the policy. faith organizations board that has 8 members. Out of those 8 members is the chairperson, the vice chairperson, 3 members who should belong to a religious faith organization, okay, the board secretary, and 2 local government representatives. That therefore means that if you are not subscribed to a religious faith organizations, you cannot be part of the board that determines, one, how religious faith organizations are vetted, how they're monitored, if they can be registered or if they can be deregistered. Such a board, it can only mean that ultimately there will be a state religion, because it will be a conduit for them to pass exactly how they would want the affairs of religion to be governed. Yes.
Of course, Ssenyonga, the 1995 Constitution prescribed that the state shouldn't adopt a national law on religions. But then it's the very reason that government came out, because there was a loophole. They felt like there's no law regulating, you know, religious bodies, because there are some unscrupulous pastors. It might not be Mbonye, but they are there. So don't you think this law would actually help to rein in on the unscrupulous pastors?
We quote that Article 7 of the Constitution says that Uganda will not adopt a state religion. Now, again, Article 29 explicitly provides for that. Now, the right to freedom of religion is not an absolute right, meaning that it can be limited under Article 43 of the Constitution. And the premises are very clear, where there is public interest, but also that the limitation must be acceptable and demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic state, meaning that there must be a proper legal procedure. So question is this, that before you make any policy, there must be a mischief. Now, a mischief must be again reasonable. Now, when you read the problem statement of the religious policy, it gives isolated examples to be the general representation of what's actually happening in the church. Policy does not explicitly regulate all other faiths. It only cites a few of them. Now, what we are saying is that policy alone, it cannot limit the unscrupulous pastors. Reason being, there are enough penal laws. There are enough laws that they can be relied on. The Anti-Corruption Act law, there must be credence observation to the constitutional values. Now, when we read the national objectives or directive principles of state policy, they clearly state that Uganda's foreign policy is to the extent that it respects international legal obligations. What are our legal obligations? They are stated under different international laws. If this policy is passed into law, it will violate those particular provisions. The International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the East African Treaty, the East African Protocol, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the Siracusa Principles, the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Now, all those provisions put legal obligations internationally to the extent of respect of the freedom of religion. It's a sacrosanct right that the state does not have authority to legislate against. So the key argument is this, beyond just the limitation by unscrupulous pastors. We don't want the state to come as the mastermind of controlling what's happening in the church. That whatever they're doing, they don't have a basis. Their problem statement, their rationale, the institutional mechanisms of implementation of the policy are actually, they're actually not watertight. And in any case, they are very ill-founded and bad-spirited.
Now, let's talk about fresh registration of the churches right there now and mosques. Now, the transition will create confusion, I believe. So what becomes of religious institutions that fail to meet new standards, and what happens to the marriages they conducted and registered already?
Firstly, the ones that fail to meet their standards would have to be deregistered, which is very unfair. Okay, these are people that are called of God, that have operated in the absence of such a law, and there are actually results to it. For example, one of the results that I believe should be one of the most pressing issues for the government to key in, especially because of the decrying state of the nation in as far as the poverty, hence creation of we have a section of people, okay? One of the things that the Bible preaches, or the Bible holds very fundamentally, is wealth. If there's a section of people in this nation that have manifested supernatural wealth, what happens if such people are considered to be deregistered. Okay? We are actually trying to ensure that this nation comes out of the place that it has been in. And here we are facing a predicament that if in the event that they're considered not to fall within the statutory provisions of such a law, if enacted, then they're deregistered, which would be very unfair to them. Secondly, your question was what happens to those marriages? Again, I believe that's still a ploy by the media. The Marriage Act provides for the procedure of marriages, the licenses and the like. Now, out of all the religious institutions that are existent, only one has been picked on, the one that was in Bugolobi, and they made quite a fuss about it. What happens to all these others that are licensed? There are penal laws, like Simon mentioned. Recently, during the media brief, Honorable Simon Lokodo mentioned that the reason for enactment of this law is so that, you know, pastors or religious leaders are not subjected to penal laws. My question is, you are Ugandan, you are a religious leader. Why shouldn't you be subject to that? You are governed by the Constitution of Uganda, right? Which is the supreme law. So why then should a religious leader be exempted? Let them be prosecuted according to the courts of law. That's why we have
Evelyn Naikova, I think we'll have to leave it at that note. When it comes to religion and politics, I think we can go on and on in that regard. Evelyn Naikova and Simon Ssenyonga, thank you for having me this time.
Thank you very much.
Yes. You helped us clear the air in that regard. Mbonye and faith
Prophet
regulation.
Elvis Mbonye.
Yes, Prophet Elvis Mbonye and faith regulation right there. You're still watching Morning at NTV. Right about now, I'm afraid we'll have to close the show. We have run out of time in that regard. We'll have to see you tomorrow, same time, 6:30 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m. On behalf of Mala and myself, including the whole team right here at Morning at NTV, have yourselves a blessed day.